Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 312 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, we're going to tackle the topic of ghostworking and how to solve it. So if you've got a ghostworking problem, this is the episode for you. Or if you don't even know what ghostworking is, well, this is also the episode for you because I'm going to talk about it. So let's get into this topic right now. All right, so as many of you would know, there's lots of buzzwords that fly around. Every year there's some new word that's created to talk about some sort of leadership topic or a workplace topic. And ghostworking is one of those popular terms that came up in 2025, actually. And essentially, ghostworking means that an employee might be physically present or logged in remotely to their workplace, but they're not actually engaged or productive. So there's less visible effort. So someone is sort of being present but not doing the work. Now, for people who are of my sort of age, which is 45 years old at this time, you might have heard of this topic before, but now it's got a cool new name called ghostworking. It's really just the topic of presenteeism, which is what we used to call when someone's present in the workplace but not committed. So they don't get in trouble because they're still there, but they're not really doing the work. So it's really presenteeism dressed up with a fancy new name. So that's pretty much what ghostworking is. Now, at its core, ghostworking is really about a lack of commitment. It's about a lack of commitment to the job. It's about a lack of commitment to the team and the organization. Because if someone's willing to log in or, be at work but not actually putting the effort, then they're not committed, right? They don't have that commitment or drive to actually improve things at the organization, for example. Now, firstly, you might say, well, they're lazy, they need to be fired, all that stuff. Well, yes and no, because often when I see a lack of commitment, it's not necessarily because the person's useless or doing a bad job or not capable. It's because the environment hasn't been set up to help them feel committed. So what do we talk about when we talk about commitment? Well, when we're trying to build commitment, there's a couple of different things that we want to build commitment to. So for example, one thing might be, we want to build your employees' commitment to you, their leader. We want them to be committed to supporting you, the boss. We also want the team member to be committed to helping other team members. We also want the team member to be committed to the organization and the work itself. The outcomes that your team provides or your organization provides. So what you might notice, right? Commitment is something that's known as an intrinsic motivator. It's something inside of you that you feel self-driven to achieve, or you feel motivated from an internal perspective, rather than there's an external reward where if you do this work, you get a bonus, for example. It's more about, well, I'm internally driven to get the right outcome and to do well and to do a good job. And so really when we're building commitment, we're trying to build this intrinsic motivation. And we want the person to be committed to you, to the team members, and to the organization and the work itself, right? And the customers potentially of the organization, whoever they might be. So that's what ghostworking is really about. It's this lack of commitment. So what we want to do is build that commitment. But firstly, before we dig into some of those strategies, I want to go back to some motivation theory. Now, if you've listened to my podcast a lot, you've probably heard me talk about this at some point, but one of the important things to consider when it comes to motivation is what became known as hygiene factors by Hertzberg, who came up with the motivator hygiene theory many years ago. Now, there's certain criticism of his work in that the subset of people that he did the study on was limited and all this sort of stuff. But I still think the hygiene factors are really important to remain aware of. And what I mean by hygiene factors are these are things that can demotivate someone. So they're not motivators in the sense that they don't push you to higher levels of performance, but if they're not in place, they will demotivate you. So some really common examples of this are team relationships. If people aren't getting along well, there's big conflict around you in the workplace, that can be a demotivator. So that can be a hygiene factor. A massive one is pay or salary. If you think you are unfairly paid or not paid well enough, there is a very good chance you will be demotivated, and no team building or whatever it is will improve that motivation until you get that pay right. Another one is working conditions. You want to have a nice place to work. You want to have a safe workplace, all those sorts of good things. They are another factor that can be a huge demotivator if they're not there. And the other one is fairness, right? So if you perceive that you are unfairly treated or you're seeing people being treated unfairly, that can be a huge demotivator as well. So the reason I mention these factors is, no effort to build commitment for these ghost working people will work unless you get these basic factors right. So if you're trying to eliminate ghost working as a problem in your team, but you're not paying people well enough, you're out of luck, unfortunately. You'd really have to find people that require less money, really. Because when people perceive that they're underpaid, it can be a huge demotivator. And if you put people in terrible working conditions, that's a huge demotivator as well. And you will notice that this ghost working becomes a big problem because it's a real lack of commitment there. So the first thing I want to note is get these hygiene factors right. You can't just underpay someone and then expect them to be committed to the team and the workplace. It just doesn't happen that way. And that might sound obvious, but it's something that is a big source of dissatisfaction and demotivation across many workplaces. So how do we build this commitment? Once we've got the motivation factors in place, these hygiene factors, the basics, right? Well, you want to build commitment. So think back to your career, right? I used to have certain managers, for example, who I really wanted to do a good job for. And even though sometimes I didn't feel like going to work and that sort of stuff, maybe I was demotivated one day, I remember thinking that I don't want to let that manager down. And that's commitment, right? Or it's about my teammates. Like, oh, I'm in a team and yeah, I can't be bothered, but I'm going to do it because I don't want to let my team down. That's commitment as well. Or I can't be bothered today. I'm not motivated, but the customer needs this. That's commitment, right? You're trying to build that sort of commitment where you will do things even if you don't feel like it because you're committed to the cause or the person. So really, one of the big parts of commitment when it comes to getting your employee, your ghost worker, to be committed to you or your other team members is really getting to know each other on a personal level. And this means sharing information, talking about the weekend, being a bit more social. It also means you could potentially do little activities. And I've mentioned a few of them on the podcast before, I'm pretty sure. Like when I run training sessions now, what I do is I actually get people in the course to share information with each other. So for example, I'll say, okay, this morning, I want you to turn to the person next to you and tell them a story about your name. And I remember I had someone in the class who was like, oh, my name's really boring. I don't have any story to tell about it. It's like, John Smith or whatever it was, or something like that. And I thought, well, isn't that a story in itself, right? So anyway, I'm digressing here, but the point is getting people to share a story about their name, or maybe, hey, get your key ring out and tell us a story about something on your key ring. That can be another great little thing to use as well. There's lots of different things you can use to try to stimulate discussion and basically sharing that information between each other. And what it does is it builds a personal connection, because you don't just want a work connection, you want a personal connection because it builds trust, it builds that intimacy between people. So if I know something about, my co-worker's family, for example, or what their hobbies are or what they really love in life, I start to feel closer to them, and I'm generally going to be less likely to try to want to let them down because I'm building that connection. And these aren't quick fixes, right? You don't just do this overnight. It takes time. But this sort of thing can be really useful, right? Getting your team members to connect to each other in a positive way can be really good. So something else to focus on with your ghost working employees is really connecting to purpose as well. So you want people to find a sense of purpose, which is also another factor in motivation theory that's quite strong. Now, when it comes to purpose, this is another internal intrinsic motivator. When you have a sense of purpose about what you do, you will generally feel more connected and you will generally feel more committed. So we want to build this sense of purpose with our ghost working employees. A couple of ways to do this. One way is to focus on career planning, finding out what that team member wants to achieve in their career or in their life in general, and trying to use that direction to influence what sort of work you give them, what sort of training they do, what sort of projects they work on, whatever it could be. You're trying to use that career direction or life direction in general to get them to feel more connected and give them a sense of purpose that they're growing and they're achieving something, right? So this is where career planning can be a really useful motivator because it gives people that sense of purpose. Oh, maybe you find out that they want to be a manager one day. Okay, well then what could help them get there? You can try to give them little opportunities. And once they see that you're supporting that development, they might become more committed to you, but they might also feel a sense of purpose because they can see that they're getting somewhere. They're getting somewhere where they want to go. And just be aware as well, some people aren't interested in the work that they're doing right now. And their career direction might actually be outside into a different organization, into some different profession. That's okay too. I think it's good for leaders to support that, even if it takes them away from the team, because while they're in the team, they'll be more committed until they leave. So another thing that can help people feel connected to purpose is delegation of responsibility. Now, this is counterintuitive. Sometimes you would think, oh, I'm going to give this person more responsibility, but they're ghost working, right? Why would I give them more responsibility? Well, there are some situations I've noticed in my career when I was leading teams where you delegate some more responsibility to someone, you get someone to own something, get someone to own part of the team or a process or something like that. And it actually makes them more motivated, which was counterintuitive to me. I thought when I did this once, I remember delegating to somebody, "Oh, I need you to own this part and to learn all about these new devices because we're rolling out new devices into our sites, right, into our workplace. So we need you to own that. We need you to understand all about them. We need you to upgrade them, make sure they're supported, all that sort of stuff. That's your job." That person really got a kick out of that because they owned it, right? That was their thing. They got to learn about it. They were keen on the topic. And instead of being less motivated because, oh, they're just giving me more work to do, that person became more motivated because they had greater responsibility. So that's one way as well. Another thing to do is to think about helping your people connect to the impact that they have on the team or the organization that they're in. So, for example, many years ago now, I used to work in the aged care industry for about 2 years, and I was running corporate projects and, with various project teams. And the corporate projects were sort of boring because they were just like accounting systems, blah, blah, blah. But then we did some projects where we're actually out at the facilities, which is where the aged care residents lived. And we got to meet some of the residents and we got to meet the staff who were out dealing with the residents every day. It made me feel much more connected to the organization and what the organization did, and actually made me feel more motivated and committed to not want to let those people down who were doing the good work at the front line. So if you can help people connect to the purpose of the organization or the team and what your team does, that can be a great way to do it. And there can be simple ways to do this, like, get your team to volunteer once a year in the canteen at the aged care facility, for example. That's what we did. See if you can organize a volunteering opportunity where your team gets to help out a different area of the organization. They can learn more about what happens and learn more about other teams and the impact their work has on the customers as well. So there's some ways to increase commitment. Remember, we want commitment to you, and if you're supportive of them, they're likely to be more committed to you. You want commitment to the other team members as well, and you want commitment to the organization and the work that is done in the team as well. And don't forget those hygiene factors, which is a big challenge if they're not met. So these sort of challenges are something I work with a lot of leaders on, right? Uncommitted, unmotivated team members. So if you're interested in potentially exploring leadership coaching options, go to my show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/312, and there's a booking button there to book a 30-minute conversation with me. We can just talk about what you might need, talk about whether coaching is a good thing for you. At the start of 2026, it's quite a good time to get in touch because we've got all year to focus and achieve some really cool stuff. So get in touch if you think coaching might be helpful for you, and you can check out my leadership coaching page as well. Because if you have a ghostworking problem, maybe we can work on that together. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. And keep up the thoughtful leadership as usual. I'm sure you are, but it's good to have a reminder, hey? And I'll be back next week.